are live here on OC Rock Radio, on Facebook Live, and on the TuneIn app. If you are listening right now, this is the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have another great show for you guys. Today, of course, the Final Four and National Championship for college basketball are this coming weekend. We're going to get all into that. Of course, big-time Duke falling in the tournament. Kind of seemed like they could have fell a couple times in this tournament. They finally, due to Tom Izzo and Michigan State. So we're going to get into that and get into the 3 games that you're going to see this weekend for that. We're going to jump a little bit later to the show, talk about the NBA. It's the end of the season. We're going to discuss who we think MVP is, and we're going to kind of go over the 18 possible playoff teams and stuff like that, and see who we legitimately think can have a chance at winning the championship. And then at the very end of the show, we're going to jump into the failure that is the Alliance of American Football. What's going to happen with that? And then, of course, we're going to talk about the first week of the MLB season, considering some crazy stuff went down. So, Jared, though, let's start with the Duke Blue Devils. We're going to get into the kind of predicting and analysis of the actual big games coming up for the Final Four National Championship. But I think most people care about Duke in this sense and want to discuss what happened with Duke, how they ended up losing with these superstar players, and overall what's going to happen with those said superstar players. So, Jared, I know you are kind of the resident Duke fan here in the studio. What happened to Duke? Why could they not at least make it to the Final Four?
Listen, they ran into a more complete team. And for all the hype that surrounds Duke and Zion Williams and R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish having the top 3 high school recruits all go to the same school in 1 year, I don't believe that's ever been done in college basketball history. So the hype going into the season was crazy. It was nuts, right? And obviously Zion Williams definitely lived up to all of that hype. You could say R.J. Barrett definitely had his moments, but Cam Reddish for sure I think was definitely a kid that underachieved, and maybe there was too much pressure. Obviously, Zion, listen, CBS these last couple games had Zion Williams, a camera that was literally on Zion Williams for the entire game. It didn't matter what else was going on. If it was a timeout, if the game was actually going on, Zion Williams was the main star of this team. So for everyone else, who they were kind of taking a back seat, and I'm sure, within the group, and kind of behind the scenes, it was all fine because I think they're a really close-knit group. But on the court, when all eyes are on them, you could definitely tell that I think there was a lot of pressure on R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish to perform, and I think sometimes they just weren't able to do it. So when you're going up against a Michigan State team, Cassius Winston and all of the great talent. Now, maybe they don't have the talent that Duke has, but with Coach Tom Izzo, the way that he's able to get the most out of his recruits and out of his team, he's got guys there that are sophomores and juniors who have been in the program for a couple years. So they've been able to go at this more than one time. They have a little more experience. And I think all of that really led to this W. Now, Duke only lost by 1 point. Now, from a statistical standpoint, I can really tell you it was basically because of 2 things. Because Duke is a horrible three-point shooting team, and Duke is a even worse free throw shooting team.
And doesn't that end up kind of screwing over most teams? I mean, we blasted the Lakers on this show, and I think I've actually said this exact same thing before, that one of the reasons the Lakers didn't make the playoffs this year is because of their horrendous three-point shooting and their even worse free throw shooting. Duke in this tournament should have lost in the second round. They got lucky. And then they should have lost in the Sweet 16, and they got lucky. This time, they didn't get lucky. You don't beat Tom Izzo and Cassius Winston and the multitude of Michigan State players by making mistakes like that consistently over and over and over again. You can beat UCF. You can beat whoever they beat in the Sweet 16, but you can't beat the superpower teams. And if they would have played UNC, they wouldn't have beat them. If they would have played Texas Tech, Gonzaga, Auburn, whoever else you want to say that they is a really, really good team, they would not have beat them because of those intangibles. You have to have the intangibles. You can have star players. You can have the best player in the world But if you don't make your free throws and you don't make your threes, you cannot win in today's basketball.
No, you can't.
No,
and it really is very simple, right? We just mentioned all those star players and all the accolades that these guys are all Americans and all the awards that they have and all the crazy dunks that Zion Williams has done during the season and the game-winning threes that Cam Reddish has made. But at the end of the day, it comes down to very simple basketball of making free throws and proper execution. And on that night, Duke they came up just a little bit short. Now, it wouldn't have been surprising to see Duke win because their previous 2 wins in the tournament were by 1 point. By 1 possession at least.
Yeah.
And very easily could have lost both of those games. So, third time, again, which just
third
wasn't
time's the charm.
Right,
Yeah,
third time was the charm for this team. And Michigan State, who is a very well-deserving team, gets to move on. So, I was not surprised. I could have seen this game going either way. It was very much back and forth, and the ball just rolled Michigan State's way, a few more times.
Yeah, no. And Michigan State, don't get me wrong, going head-to-head with Duke and only beating them by 1 is not a bad thing. We're talking about Duke because that's what most people are going to want to pay attention to in this tournament. And to be honest, I bet you viewership for this national title game and the Final Four will be a bit lower because this superpower team, the best player in the world in college basketball at least, is not going to be playing in. So that's why we're talking about them right now to start this show. We're going to move on from them and we're going to talk about the rest of the tournament in a second, but we just want to give our thoughts on why this stacked team didn't end up even getting to the Final Four. They only won 3 games and really only won 2 legitimate games in this tournament, and both those wins were kind of sketchy too. So there was some problems with this team. Now, speaking of those problems, free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, there are some top NBA prospects on this team, obviously. Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, and then, of course, R.J. Barrett. Jared, do you think that maybe, besides Zion, obviously, because I think he's the consensus number 1 at worst number 2 pick in this draft, do you think Cam Reddish and R.J. Barrett's stock has been hurt a little bit by 2 factors? One, the emergence of Zion Williamson being a star, and some of their failures down the stretch in some of these games.
Of course it is. Listen, this is the biggest stage, right? This is what you guys went to Duke for, was to play at this type of elite level. And really quickly, I think this season ends up being a bust for Duke. I think it was national championship or bust. It's not just about winning your conference championship or winning a few games in the tournament, especially as a number 1 seed. When you have this type of elite talent on your team, you're supposed to make it to the Final Four and to the championship game. So the fact that Duke did not do that, I think unfortunately for them, this season will be a bust on their record. But as far as R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish goes, yeah, I think if you're an NBA scout or if you're an NBA team and you're looking to obviously retool and rebuild, you're one of those top 5 worst teams who's going to have a high chance of getting that number 2 or number 3 overall pick. Yeah, I definitely think you have to have a lot of more questions than answers right now as far as R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish go. For Cam Reddish, he was basically non-existent at points in the season. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, he did have that game against Virginia Tech when he had a game-winning 3-point shot. Early on in the season, he, I believe, was shooting over 35% from the 3-point line. And as the season went on, he literally was under 25%. So his game kind of deteriorated. And I'm not sure, like I said, if he was, just feeling the pressure from Zion Williams and trying to match that elite status, which you're not going to do in the first place.
Yeah, no,
so why even try?
Exactly.
But I don't really have an answer for why he dipped in his play so much. But yes, listen, if I'm in the top 5, I'm not taking Cam Reddish. Like maybe top 15 or maybe somewhere in the 20s. But the play that Cam Reddish put on the court this year does not, in my opinion, result in him being a top 5 or even a top 10 pick. R.J. Barrett, on the other hand, I feel that he has all the tools to do that. He just fell a little short and kind of carrying the reins, and mainly when I think Zion Williams was injured. And those 5 games, it was really like, okay, R.J. Barrett, this is your time to lead the team, right? Cam Reddish is struggling a little bit. None of the other players on the team are really elite to where you can say, all right, guys, put the team on my shoulders. I'm going to take over. So for R.J. Barrett, I think that was his time to shine in the lone spotlight. And, I believe they went like 3-2 or something like that. And it's not really about wins and losses. It's about how he played. He was playing more the point guard position. Trey Jones was taking a back seat a little bit. He was kind of bringing the ball up, trying to facilitate, not just score. And you saw his turnover ratio go way up. Listen, you can go both ways on R.J. Barrett. I think he's a great talent. I think he has a lot to work on. I think this offseason will be huge for R.J. Barrett and for Cam Reddish. What are these guys going to work on? Are they going to be in the gym every single day? Are they going to be trying to get bigger and stronger because obviously their bodies are still growing? But when you get into the NBA, that's a man's league. You drive into the paint. It's not like in college and high school where you can kind of just, body off somebody and get your own shot. In the NBA, you're going up against Adetokounmpo, and you're going up against Joel Embiid and all those big guys, right? DeMarcus Cousins. You're not just going to be able to go into the lane and get the shot whenever you want. So this offseason and what these guys put in as far as work and training, I think will really be a tell sign of where these guys get drafted, because all these scouts for the NBA, they go to these workouts. They get to hold private workouts for these players along with the NBA Combine. So it will be, wherever these guys go in the draft, I think it will be because of not only the production that they had this season, but the production and the work that they put in the offseason right now.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting where these guys get drafted, because you look at a guy like R.J. Barrett, he's going to end up with the Knicks, the Suns, the Cavs, the Bulls, or the Hawks. Besides maybe a trade happening, those are the 5 teams that you're going to end up on. They're all trash, to be honest. They all are not going to be making the playoffs next year, more than likely. So you have to look at it like, if R.J. Barrett can't lead a college basketball team to wins over teams like UNC and struggle against Virginia Tech by themselves, what's to say that this guy by himself, without Cam Reddish, without Zion Williamson, can do any better in the NBA, which is harder? That's kind of what I see about R.J. Barrett. Now, Cam Reddish could maybe fall to the Lakers, for example, and then he has a more fortunate outcome. Obviously, won't get paid as much and stuff like that. But, you see these two guys, and I think you mentioned those great comments about the fact that they were 3-2 and they struggled against Virginia Tech, and it just didn't seem like it worked out for them as the number one guy on this team. Well, that's going to happen in the NBA to an extent even worse than it was at Duke. I mean, nobody ever gets to play with 2 NBA players like that in college. Maybe that Kentucky team a couple of years ago. That's the only one I can think of. So R.J. Barrett's going to go to a horrible team where, maybe he'll be paired with maybe a Trae Young and a Zach LaVine and a Lauri Markkanen, or a Colin Sexton or Devin Booker or something like that. But man, I don't like. If I was picking in and we talked about this off air, if I was picking 3 and above, I'm like, I don't know what I'm getting. Right? You got Jarrett Culver up there from Texas Tech. You got Kizzy Okpala from Stanford. Kobe White, and then you have R.J. Barrett and Bol and Cam Reddish, and it's like, I don't know any. I mean, you don't really know about any of those guys. John Morant and Zion Williamson, in my opinion, are kind of locks. I think they're going to be pretty, at least, serviceable and very solid NBA players and occasional All-Stars, barring injuries. The rest of the guys, I don't really know. So you're right. This offseason will be very interesting for not only Cam Reddish, but R.J. Barrett, because they both kind of failed as being the top guys on their team when they had a chance and Zion was out.
You're right, yeah. And just right now looking, say the NBA ended today, and the draft order would be set. The Knicks would be number 1, the Suns would be number 2, and then I believe the Cleveland Cavaliers would be number 3, right? So all of those teams are horrible for a reason, because they don't necessarily have a superstar or superstars. So just looking at the Knicks roster right now, and that's more like where Zion could go potentially with a number 1 overall pick. They have Dennis Smith Jr., DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Knox, and Alonzo Trier. Those are the only...
they have the worst roster in the NBA.
They easily have the worst roster, right?
They don't have a single guy that I would want to build around for that team. Everybody on the New York Knicks is tradable, in my opinion.
Very easily.
You get Zion, that's different. You get John Morant, that's different. The Knicks, I'm telling you right now, the Knicks need to do whatever they can to get Zion. And I know if the Suns get the number 1 pick, they're probably not going to trade that back. Or if the Cavs get the number 1 pick, or the Bulls, or a team jumps ahead, they're not going to want to trade that. But Man, whatever the Knicks got to do, pay off the commissioner, whatever, they have to get Zion. I'm telling you that
Pay
right
off
now.
the commissioner.
We need the NBA to be competitive in the big markets again. You see the Lakers aren't making the playoffs. The Knicks are awful. Chicago's awful. The Nets are good, but they have no chance at the finals. Big markets. The NBA is popular, but how it could be even more popular if New York's in the playoffs every year and Chicago's in the playoffs. So, whatever the NBA's got to do, get Chicago in there in the top 3, get New York at number 1, whatever you
Well,
whatever
listen, let's also not forget. Now, this is also speculation. We don't necessarily like to do this on this show, but I'm going to because I think it's so intriguing. This offseason, the Knicks have also been, rumored to be interested in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
That's true. Yeah.
So, just think about this for a second. Kyrie Irving at the point, Kevin Durant at the 2-3, and then you got Zion Williams as that hybrid 4.
That's a playoff team for sure.
That's a kind of a nasty.
Well, Kevin
starting
Durant,
duo.
in my opinion, is top 3 in the NBA, no doubt, right now.
I think Kevin Durant is him and James Harden
That's
now
what
are the two
exactly.
arguably
I don't want
best
to
players in the
I'll
NBA.
put LeBron in the top 3. I know he's had a horrible year, but he's still there, right? I'm gonna put him in there. But Durant's an all-time player. Kyrie has shown he can win a championship, right? Now he's kind of had some. I wouldn't necessarily want him leading my team, but yeah, you're right, playing second fiddle, and then you add Zion in there, who is going to be hungry at MSG every night. Let's go. But like we said, we're just speculating.
I just wanted to point that out because if the Knicks do get that first overall
100%.
pick, they're not good. Like Zion Williams' contract the money would not necessarily
For 4
affect
years,
the Knicks from going out and getting a max player or even potentially 2 max players, depending on how they work the rest of their roster.
Exactly, and because they're not, you'd have to trade away DeAndre Jordan and probably give away it'd probably give away Dennis Smith Jr. because his contract 100%, and that's what I'm saying. Their roster is so transformable right now that you can, if that's a word.
We'll go with it.
Yeah,
okay.
we'll go with it.
Go with
You
it.
understand what I'm saying? So that could be interesting. And then you're right. If you sign Durant, say 3-4 years, sign Kyrie 3-4 years, then you have Zion for 3-4 years. There's your team. And all of those guys are young enough to lead a team too. So yeah, that's gonna be really interesting. But we do need to move on. We have the Final Four National Championship to talk about. But again, that's why we started the show with Duke, because there is so much to talk about with those 3 big guys. And then you throw Trey Jones, which I think could be a very serviceable NBA player too, on that team. So, let's jump back into the actual college basketball season. We have Michigan State, Texas Tech, Auburn, and Virginia as your final 4 teams. Now, Jared, I want to start with a game that you might be somewhat familiar with because you went to.
Yes, I did.
Jared actually got to be literally up close and personal at the Texas Tech Gonzaga game. So, Jared, tell us how that game was and give us something about Texas Tech that we don't know, because I think I know as little about Texas Tech as I do about every other team. So, please educate us on Texas Tech and how good of a team they are going into this Final Four.
First of all, I will say it was my first time being to a March Madness tournament game.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that it was here at the Honda Center in Anaheim, which is just about 30 minutes north of where we are right now. Yeah. My girlfriend and I had seats. We were about 8 rows from the court, so it was awesome. Right behind the basket and right behind the Gonzaga band. So it was crazy. Definitely a lot more Gonzaga fans than Texas Tech fans.
Makes sense.
But Texas Tech showed out. They had like 1 row on the opposite side of the Texas Tech bench, and they were loud the entire game. They made themselves known. So the atmosphere was fantastic, and the game was even better. It was a close game throughout. I believe the biggest lead at any point was like 6 for Gonzaga, but Texas Tech was just finding ways to hang into the game. It was really funny. A mutual friend, was at the game and basically was dogging on Gonzaga, saying that their point guard Perkins, the guy who basically kind of ended the game for them when he made that illegal play on the out-of-bounds play for Texas Tech, said that he needed to go. So it was funny that Gonzaga, and this was after the game, so obviously emotions were running high, but Gonzaga fans were, they were giving it to their players.
You got to get on your team, man. They
were giving it to the players. They weren't just sitting here and sulking. They were sitting here and saying, listen, this is on them. And listen, if you're from Spokane, that Gonzaga basketball is like everything, right? They don't have a football team. I'm sure they obviously have other athletic teams, but basketball is what a lot of people hang their hats on. And the fact that this team was able to be a number 1 seed and get so far and yet lose to a number 3 Texas Tech, who not many people probably had Texas Tech going into the Final Four.
Yeah,
so,
no, I know. Texas Tech for me was, they were my favorite Big 12 team besides Kansas. You know, you always got to throw Kansas in there when you talk about the Big 12. But I really liked Texas Tech, and they went far last year. And I'm not going to take credit. I don't know much about Texas Tech, but I saw how good. I did know about Jarrett Culver, but that was really it. I always say this in college basketball: if you have one guy, you have a chance to get deep in the tournament. You know, I thought Alabama last year with Colin Sexton could have got far. I thought John Morant might get deep with Murray State. I don't think these teams usually can win the championship, but I do think when you have a star player and you have experience in the tournament in the past, you can do some stuff. And that is exactly what Texas Tech is and was. They have a great head coach as well. But yeah, so I actually, although I didn't put this in my bracket because I'm a weirdo and just go for a lot of upsets, I did actually think that Texas Tech would get at least to the Elite Eight. I did not think they would get to the Final Four. So this is what's surprising to me. But I was definitely high on them, and I think you look in the Big 12 right now. If that coach doesn't leave Texas Tech, which you sometimes see them go to bigger schools,
right.
I think Texas Tech is a force to be reckoned with. It might be the best team in the Big 12 for years to come if they can keep their roster up.
Yeah, no, and listen, just like we talked about in that Duke game earlier about how Duke was a horrible three-point shooting team and was even worse from the free throw shooting line, you could say the opposite about Texas Tech. Now, they went 9 for 23 from the three-point line, so that's not obviously great, but 9 three-pointers is suitable, and in today's basketball should get you a W, on top of going 16 for 19 from the free throw line, right? David Moretti, a guy from Italy that Texas Tech has, basically made the two biggest three-point baskets of his life late in the fourth quarter. He made one over a Gonzaga player, like right in his face, and just swished it. And it was crazy because, like I mentioned, that one little quarter of Texas Tech fans, they literally, you would have thought we were playing at Texas Tech.
Yeah, wow.
They were going nuts. It was crazy. Like, the rest of the Gonzaga fans went silent. So he made two big threes down at the end, late in the fourth quarter, to kind of seal the deal. And then Gonzaga, it's like they kind of collapsed. They started turning the ball over. Like I mentioned, they had that one illegal penalty towards the end of the game with Perkins. And it was like they just, I don't know if they got down on themselves, but it was like, oh my gosh, Texas Tech has now just hit two big threes and they've gone up by 2 possessions. And Gonzaga just completely fell apart. So it was a great game up until the last couple minutes when you could just see Texas Tech kind of just stretching that lead. And it wasn't even so much the points lead. It was just like, okay, this team just seems to be more dominant. Towards the end of the game, they're coming together, and Gonzaga is falling apart. So I think that's really what it was. But at the end of the day, it was a great game. Now I'm spoiled. Now every time I go to a game, I'm going to want to sit so close.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I hope that for years to come, the tournament can either be in Anaheim or at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
I think what they usually do with the tournament is they always do have a Western thing because there's so many Western teams in the Pac-12, stuff like that.
Right.
I do think it's Honda Center, Staples Center, and San Jose are the 3 locations that they generally put. Now, with the Golden State Warriors' new arena, they might start putting games in San Francisco because that place is going to be state-of-the-art, and I've already seen pictures of it. It's amazing. So that might be an option as well, considering the Pac-12 offices are in San Francisco as well. But, no. I've gone to bars and sat outside Staples Center for those games before. I've definitely thought about going to Honda Center when Buddy Hield was around in Oklahoma and stuff like that. So I was definitely jealous that you got to go to that game on I believe it was, Saturday. Yeah. So we get lucky here being in California that we do have a chance to go to an Elite 8 game every year. And I believe coming up sooner than later, they're going to have the Final Four National Championship in the new Los Angeles Rams Stadium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you got to think about that sooner or later too. So, yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. Let's jump into the actual games and stuff like that and look at the teams. So we have Auburn. Well, actually, let's do Texas Tech. So we have Texas Tech versus Michigan State, which I really like this game. I could see both these teams winning it. Michigan State, they defeated Bradley in the first round, Minnesota in the second round. They beat up on LSU, beat them by 20 in the Sweet 16, and then of course beat Duke like we've talked about for 20 minutes now on this podcast, 68-67. Texas Tech, like you mentioned, they beat Gonzaga in their last game by 5. They beat Michigan by 19, and they beat a number 6 seed Buffalo team, which a lot of people thought highly of, by 20 in the second round too. So Texas Tech really has kind of gone through their competition pretty easily up until the Elite Eight. Michigan State, besides Duke, really hasn't played like an extremely tough game. Who do you see with the advantage here, without putting too much bias into it? The fact that you saw a lot more of Texas Tech this weekend. Who do you think has the advantage? Who do you think is winning this game and going to the national championship?
Listen, right now, Michigan State. The way that this team is built, like I mentioned, with the veterans that they have, this isn't just a team that's built with a bunch of freshmen. And obviously, we saw with Duke, sometimes that doesn't always work. So Michigan State, this is on Cassius, right? This is all on him. He's not only the point guard of this team. He's the leader. He's the one that facilitates. But guess what? He can drop 20 just like he did against Duke in their last game. So he facilitates the ball, and he doesn't get much of a break, right? I think he's only Tom Izzo only lets him get a couple minutes rest for the whole 40 minutes of the game. So he is the one that is out there and kind of makes everything go. Basically, in all the statistical categories, Michigan State edges out Texas Tech, whether it's by a few points here and there. In the rebounding category, it's +6 for Michigan State. So that's a big one right there. The only stat that I'm looking at right now where Texas Tech edges Michigan State is steals, where they average 2 more steals a game. So if you're Texas Tech, it's going to be about turning the ball over, stopping Cassius, and not letting them get into a rhythm. Because I think the thing about Michigan State is they don't necessarily want to run up and down. They sometimes want to set up their half court and run plays and run clock. And when you get into a tournament game, especially the Final Four like this, things can sometimes slow down. It's not always going to be this fast pace, right? You don't want to make a mistake, so you're a little tense and you're a little hesitant on certain things. This is Michigan State's game. They want to kind of control the clock, slow it down a little bit, run offense, and I think that leads, especially after watching Texas Tech against Gonzaga, where they want to get up and down, they want to shoot threes. It's almost like Texas Tech football. It's like the run and gun, air raid offense, right? It's the same thing they want to do. Michigan State wants to control the ball. So if Michigan State can do that, then I think they win, not easily, but I think they win by a comfortable margin. It doesn't come down to a 1 or 2, last second shot at the end of the game.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a very, very interesting game because you have Tom Izzo and what he brings as far as experience to the tournament. And of course, you have a star player in Cassius Winston against a Texas Tech team that's kind of new to being great at basketball with a good coach and a star player. So you kind of have this, you have even teams, but one with a lot more experience. And I'm always going to go with experience, even in a one-game winner-takes-all format. I'll go with Michigan State as well. I think if you can get through it and you can beat Duke and Coach K and figure out a way to stay close like there, I think you can stay close with Texas Tech, and then you rely on your big guys, your star players, and your veterans, because Michigan State does build up a nice group of veterans to get you that game, whether it be by 1 or 2, because all that matters in the NCAA tournament is winning the game. It doesn't matter if you win by 20. I'm going to mention it for the purposes of showing you that these teams are whooping on some teams, whooping on some good teams heading into the Final Four. But for this game, it's the veteran leadership and the leadership of Tom Izzo that I think is going to put Michigan State over the top. But I could easily see Texas Tech winning this game too. So this is the harder one to pick. This next game is a little easier to pick in my opinion. But this game is going to be great. It is the nightcap, and I'm glad it's the nightcap because it in my opinion, is the better game. So I'm going to go with Michigan State as well. We both got Tom Izzo in the national championship. All right, moving on to Auburn versus Virginia. Literally two kind of opposite styles coming into this game. A styles clash here in this game. And so just to give you the recap, Virginia, they beat Gardner-Webb, Oklahoma, Oregon, and then they beat Purdue by 5 in their last game
in overtime.
In the Elite Eight. In overtime, yes, I did forget to mention that. And then Auburn, who's coached by Bruce Pearl, although they've lost one of their best players, Chuma Okeke, I think that's how you say his name.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I don't know, so don't.
Not even gonna try it. We're gonna go with that.
They defeated New Mexico State, funny enough, only by 1 in the first round. And then whooped on Kansas, whooped on UNC, and beat up Kentucky pretty bad, too. So, weird little tournament there for Auburn. Both teams with their interesting kind of, styles going in. I'll give my opinion on this one first. I think Virginia is going to end up winning this game because I think their defense is so stout and they have great leadership. I just think that once Virginia kind of got rid of the hurdles of like the early games and what happened last year with the with the losing to the 16 seed UMBC, I really thought that they've kind of been in a groove and they've always been in every single game, and it was almost like you were waiting for them just to win every game. And there's a certain confidence about this team that, not only did they lose in the first round, literally the worst loss in tournament history, but they're like, nah, not only is that not going to happen again, we're going to get deep. And I just think this team, led by Tony Bennett, a great coach in college basketball, I think they're going to beat Auburn. Auburn has had an improbable run to the Final Four so far. I just think it's going to run out. Not really based on injury or anything like that, because they still have Bryce Brown and other players. I just think you play too many tough teams in a row. You're not beating Kansas, Kentucky, UNC, and Virginia in this tournament. It's not happening. And if they were somehow win, they're not beating Michigan State. Or that would literally maybe be the best tournament experience a team has had. So, but I'm going to go with Virginia. I'm going to go with the safer pick here. And I just think Virginia will play good enough defense, specifically in the first half, and stifle Auburn to not be able to come back in this game.
That's definitely the safer pick, and you're not wrong, right? Virginia has been the number one defensive team throughout the entire year. Kyle Guy is a lethal three-point shooter, right?
Yeah.
But they do play a slower type of pace.
The slowest style,
right?
Yeah.
They like to play good, hard defense. They come down, they set up their offense. They don't have a whole lot of transition buckets. And when they do need a bucket, they usually lean on Kyle Guy, who, like I said, is a great three-point shooter, shoots over 35% from the three. And he is basically their main offense. I mean, if you stop him and you control Virginia's three-point shooting and you force them to have to make, tough inside two-point shots, I think that's a good recipe for success against a Virginia team. So you're really not wrong there. I'm going with Auburn for two reasons. Number one, the elite talent that Auburn has beat so far in this tournament, and number two, the fact that they're on a roll right now, right? You always say that you want to go into the playoffs with momentum. You want to go into the championship with momentum.
Hottest team.
Auburn right now, to me, is the hottest team, even though they did lose, or still, in fact, with the fact that they did lose, arguably their best player. But they do have Bryce Brown, who's averaging 16 points a game, and is easily their second best player. So the fact that this team spreads the ball around, they have Dunbar, they have so many other guys that can shoot perimeter shots. They don't always lean on one guy. So every single game, it can be another player who's stepping up for them. So the fact that they beat Tennessee, they whooped on Tennessee in the SEC championship game, and I think that was really the beginning of the Auburn hype going into this tournament. And then you're right, they only beat New Mexico State by 1. But then Kentucky, North Carolina, and Kansas.
Insane.
Are you kidding me? Like those are like in the history of college basketball. When you're thinking about that, like you can obviously put Duke in there as well. You're thinking about North Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas. And the fact that Auburn has gone through all of these teams, with the exception of overtime against Kentucky, really, they've made it look easy. They've had double-digit wins against North Carolina and Kansas. So this team right now is hot. They're confident. They're riding high. And the fact that they shoot the lights out from three, I think that's just going to be a little too much for Virginia to handle. As great as of defense that they play, if Auburn can run up and down and they can get uncontested threes, I think they're going to start to fall. If they can hit 9 or 10 threes in this game, Auburn wins.
It's not the easiest thing to do in the world, though.
Yeah, I'm telling you, 9 or 10 threes, Auburn wins this game no matter what.
So actually differing opinions kind of how this game's going to go. I think it's going to be more defensive. He thinks it's going to be more offensive, and Auburn will kind of lead the pace for the game. We'll make national championship picks on the other side of this break. We do need to go to break. We're overtime, and if we go into the national championship, we'll be way over time. So on the other side of this break, We're going to be giving our national championship picks. You have Auburn versus Michigan State. I have Virginia versus Michigan State. And then we'll be jumping into the failure that is the Alliance of American Football. What's going to happen with this league? And also jump into the first week of the MLB season. And a little bit later, the NBA season is over. We're going to be kind of predicting what's going to happen in the playoffs. We don't know the seeds 100% yet, but we at least are going to give you a gauge on what's going to happen early in the playoffs, who might upset certain teams and stuff like that. So that's a little bit later, but right now we're going to go to break here on OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, and Facebook Live.
In the air to right center field. How about this for a homecoming? That is crushed into the second deck for Bryce Harper. And he gives those Phillies fans a chance to jump up and down one more time.
This ball is K-I-L-T, kill Thomas.
For a show that has no content, somehow we have extra content to talk about.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Always happens.
It always happens. I almost feel like sometimes it's easier to do the shows where you don't know kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of flow, the conversation flows.
Right, I like it.
Tillman up ahead, Winston, no one near him, and he's going to come out with it, and Michigan State is headed to Minneapolis. What a comeback. Down 10 in the first half. It was Clark's rundown, and the subsequent pass to Diakite to tie it, and that's it. Virginia advancing to the Final Four for the first time since 1984. 7 seconds, swings it, Washington fires, no, rebounded by Harper, and it's over. Anything can happen in March. For the first time, Auburn is going to the Final Four.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast live on OC Rock Radio and on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us, and we are going to continue our March Madness talk with giving our championship games. As we finished off last segment with talking about the Final Four teams, and we gave our predictions, and we are now going to talk about the championship game that will happen on Monday.
Yes.
So the two Final Four games are going to be on Saturday, back-to-back, and then Monday night will be the championship game in Minneapolis. I have Auburn against Michigan State, and Nick has Virginia. Against Michigan State. So either way, I think they will be fantastic games. It just depends on the style of play, I guess, that you would want to see. I want to see a little bit more of a fast-paced up and down.
I don't want to see the game I predicted. But
I'm just saying.
I would rather Auburn Texas Tech would be my dream matchup for the national championship.
All right.
But no, I'm going with a lot more defensive game just because I think these two teams are meant to be in the national.
Exactly. So let's get this going. I will start first with Auburn and Michigan State. We've kind of already dissected all of these teams, so we don't necessarily need to go back and do that again. I just, you know what? There's something about Auburn, man. I don't know if it's watching Charles Barkley on CBS.
That definitely does make you want to cheer for Auburn.
It is pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
He's got the balloons, and he's got the blue and orange going on. But really, even with the loss of Auburn's best player, the way that they're all in sync right now, Bruce Pearl has this team firing on all cylinders. Listen, I never thought I would say this, about me rooting for a team living and dying by the three. But right now, they're living good by that three-point shot. Now, even though they didn't make as many against Auburn as they did against their opponent. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm against Kentucky as they have in the previous games. They still, like I said,
they won. Yeah.
They have so many guys from Dunbar to Brown, and there's 2 or 3 other players that I'm missing that come off the bench that literally, that's what they do. If they're running in transition, if they have a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1, they've got 2 guys going to each 3-point wing to line up for a jump shot.
Yeah.
It's not about going for a layup. Like, Bruce Pearl wants these guys shooting threes and shooting and shooting and shooting. And listen, he's like, you're going to miss some shots, but the more opportunities we get, the better chance of us scoring points. So he wants an up-and-down, fast-paced game. And even going up against North Carolina a few previous games before, North Carolina likes to go up and down. And Auburn not only matched that, they exceeded North Carolina's game. So once they did that to North Carolina, I'm like, I don't see anyone stopping this fast-paced team if they get on a roll. So as well as Michigan State has played this year, and like I said, the fact that they have experience on their side, They have Cassius Winston, who is a great leader and a great teammate. I can't go against Auburn. I never thought I would say this in a million years. Auburn basketball will be the 2019 tournament champions this year.
And it'd be super interesting if that happens, and it would be a good story considering that Bruce Pearl was fired at Tennessee and all that stuff.
Right,
so,
exactly. Making a comeback.
Exactly, and
in
then
a
winning
sense.
the national championship.
Yes.
So you don't get much better than that. I do not have Auburn in the Final Four, so I cannot echo these statements from Jared. I have Virginia and Michigan State. I have what a lot of people maybe would have expected to be the national championship if you didn't have Duke in there. From that side of the bracket, but you know what? It seemed like the ACC's year this year.
Oh, there were so many teams in the ACC.
Yeah, they had 1 or 3 number 1 seeds.
Right. Unheard of.
Virginia, I believe, technically being the number 1 of number 1 seeds, like the
It
number
was
1
Duke.
seed. Oh, it was Duke.
Duke was the
Okay,
actual
so I was wrong about
number
that, but,
1 overall seed
which
out
makes
of everyone.
sense because they should have been anyways. But but I'm going to go with Virginia. I just think this team is so good defensively that if they can find it against Auburn, you only have to wait a day and then you play another game. And I just think defense wins championships, and that's what I'm going to go with. I think Kyle Guy will make enough big shots to win the game. Michigan State will stay in the game the whole way. But I'm going to go with Virginia. It seemed like the ACC's year this year. And, this is going to be a great game. Both these teams could win this championship, to be honest. But I just can't go against defense. And a team that is the number 1 defense that could get to the championship, like I'm predicting, you're not going to lose the championship once you get there. I think they'll win it. They'll find a way. And although they've had somewhat of an easier schedule to get into the Final Four and national championship, I don't think it matters. You get there, you win. It's only 1 game per time. It's not a 7-game series. So I got Virginia winning the national championship, and Tony Bennett, after losing to a 16 seed last year, the worst loss in NCAA tournament history, Virginia's going to win a national championship. I like that story too, as well as Auburn winning with a coach that was fired from another SEC school. So we'll move on, though. We didn't need to talk about other stuff. Enough college basketball for this show already. We're going to move into the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, if it still exists by the next time we talk about this podcast. We'll maybe talk about it again. They are ceasing operations, or what is the exact terminology of what they're doing, Jared?
That's basically
they're ceasing
what
operations.
They're doing right
now. Which means they're more than likely going to fold pretty soon. And, this comes as a shock to me because of how well the league was marketed, not only during the NFL season, but once it kind of started out, there was a lot of people that went to those first couple games. There was a lot of people that I definitely watched a couple games, not intently because you kind of need that break from football, to be honest. But, man, after the Super Bowl, the fact there was football next week, I was like, I'm excited. I thought about going to some of the games in Arizona because I was going to be in Arizona for for a weekend as well, and so I'm very surprised. If you're looking on Facebook Live right now, Jared is just plugging in his phone real quick because he needs it.
Sorry, don't want to lose
going.
juice.
No, exactly. Yeah, we need to keep it live. But
continue.
Yeah. So I was just really surprised that this league is folding so quickly. I could understand after a year maybe, and after you look at all the ratings and stuff like that, what ends up happening. But man, for this league just to fold like this in the very in the middle of the year and not wait till the end of the year, it's super surprising. I know the Hurricanes owner loses $70 million on the deal for this that he invested. Charlie Ebersol, who used to be part of the XFL, now has another failing league, and I think Bill Polian also was ahead of this. He's obviously super disappointed too. It shocked me. What do you think about this, Jared?
This is not surprising to me, and I was
in the middle of the season though.
It's not surprising to me because of how this season basically started, and the fact that at Dundon, who is basically the owner, co-founder of this league, who's also the NHL, the Carolina Hurricanes owner, had to put in, invest $250 million to, in a sense, make sure all these payments were made. And this was like week 2 or week 3, right? So there were already some rumblings of bad money management and not having funds to pay players and staff and administration and all of that. So when I started to think about that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like these guys are already having troubles and we're only in like week 2. Now, I didn't think it would get to this point, especially in the middle of the season, but it's not totally surprising to me. Listen, when you start a business, no matter how small or how large, there are going to be hurdles. There are going to be things that are unexpected that come up, and obviously with this league, that happens. They were trying to be the development league, in a sense, as Bill Polian called it, to the NFL, hoping that one day it would literally be a feeder program for players to continue to play and stay in shape and get film tape, and then transition themselves into the NFL, hopefully one day. So that was co-founder Bill Polian's kind of goal and expectations for this league. But unfortunately, Dundon, the man with all the money, basically came out in a statement, or I'm sorry, in a letter, and never actually giving I don't want to say an excuse, but an explanation as to why this league is folding. Basically just saying that they are ceasing operations and the majority of staff, will no longer be there. He said they're keeping a small contingent to pursue and look for other, potential offers. And who knows, maybe there could be a season 2 of this league or a version of this league. But right now, players are getting their last paychecks, and that is basically going to be it. And it's very interesting that Johnny Manziel, of all people, came out on Twitter yesterday and basically gave some actually good advice. You really don't think of Johnny Manziel as one that you would want to take advice from.
100%.
But he basically came out and he told all these players, he said, listen, this is going to be the last check that you're getting from the AAF. Do not go and try to file some type of lawsuit or do anything that. He's like, save your money. You're going to need it. And try to pursue other opportunities. And I think he's right because, I'm sure a lot of players within their contracts, it's stated that there could be a fold or something like that. But you never know what players are going to do if they want to go out and sue the league and say this was never a part of our contract or whatever. So hopefully these players get another opportunity, whether it's with the XFL, and I know you tweeted this out yesterday, that this could be a big opportunity for the XFL to jump in, so I'll get your thoughts on that in a minute. But really, this is, it sucks really for the players and for their families, because when you really think about this, these players were here because they wanted an opportunity to get into the NFL. The NFL is king. The NFL is God. The NFL is what all these football players, eventually wanted to get to. It's not just playing in the AAF. It's not playing in the Canadian Football League or playing in the XFL if that ever gets going. It's about playing in the National Football League, and that's what all these players wanted to do. So right now, these players are out of a job, and all these players that just relocated their families are now going to have to possibly relocate back home again. So this is a lot more than just this league and this organization falling. It's now about these players not having an opportunity to showcase themselves, potentially at least for the near future. Yeah,
and what was weird about this whole thing is that, at least with the AAF, is that the NFL has seemed to not want a development league. This fold happens about a week or 2 weeks after the NFL said, no, you're not our minor league thing, you're your own thing and stuff like that, even though the NFL Network was carrying these games.
Exactly.
And a lot of these teams were playing in NFL markets or close to NFL markets, and a lot of those players were guys that played for teams in the area. I remember that a lot of the Arizona players had previously played for the Cardinals or previously played for ASU and stuff like that. So, it was a development league. That's what I saw it as. But the NFL, just another weird decision by them, decided to not acknowledge this. Now, moving on from the AAF, you look at the XFL, because that league is coming next year. There's a lot more money in this league. I know Vince McMahon, who is I'm obviously very familiar with. I do another podcast on professional wrestling, so I follow this stuff. He's invested over $400 million already, or he's took over $400 million out of stock of his own WWE company, and he's willing to spend $500 million. The AAF is nowhere close to that. It was nowhere close. We're talking about salaries. you have $500 million invested in the league, salaries isn't a problem. And I believe the salaries for the XFL are going to be above the Canadian Football League as well.
See, really quickly, salaries for the AAF, Bill Polian came out and said this.
I don't know what it is.
They had a 3-year plan for players in the AAF. They were all signed to 3-year deals. The first year you get $70K, the second year you get $800,000, and the third year you get $100,000. It was flat, boom, boom, done. There's no real negotiating. Even for Johnny Manziel or someone of that type of magnitude, it was just $70,000, $80,000, and $100,000 in your third year, and that's how the money was going to be allocated out. Here's
the XFL's thing. So the standard form contract for the XFL is $7,500 per game. Marquee talent could make $300,000.
Jeez.
So it already is more. Let's say Johnny Manziel is looking at a $300,000 contract.
Colin Kaepernick.
Well, yeah, I think they would. Now, I do think that would, now that there isn't another entity that's going to be playing in this range, I think Vince could go above and beyond and start paying players in the millions. Now, I'll tell you this, being a professional wrestling fan, Vince does not pay the wrestlers that well either. So I don't think he's going to be here to throw $10 million at Colin Kaepernick. And actually what's funny is, I don't think we're not going to talk about this on the podcast, but did you hear it came out that Kaepernick's payment was not that much from the NFL? So yeah, maybe looking for more money to go to the XFL and stuff like that. But
really quickly, I don't mean to get off topic because I want to keep
going.
Sorry,
I just remembered that you brought up Colin Kaepernick.
And this is on Colin Kaepernick. I saw a video on Instagram a couple days ago. He was out playing flag football with a bunch of other NFL guys. Saquon Barkley was out there.
Okay.
It was a huge tournament that he was
still
in.
Play, more than likely,
and Colin Kaepernick was there showing his face and playing. And I only saw a couple throws, but he looked good. So I mean, listen, the guy still wants to play. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid did not get the type of settlement that they had hoped for. In the case with the NFL, I believe they got $10 million as a whole. So compared to what they could have gotten when people are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, they got a very small portion of that. So yes, put money aside. Colin Kaepernick, I think, wants to play football. He's still very young, right? This guy isn't 35, who's towards the end of his career. This guy can still play, and
he hasn't played in a year now.
And listen, he wasn't in shoulder pads or a helmet or anything.
But neither did Le'Veon Bell.
He looked good when he was out there throwing. Yeah. So I'm just small, but I'm just saying the dude looked like he could still play.
Quarterback is different, but Le'Veon Bell didn't play last year either. So do we all expect Le'Veon Bell just to suck next year? No. So why would Kaepernick, although he wasn't a star quarterback anymore in the league, he should still be able to start or at least be a backup of the team? I mean, we've gone over this so many times. But getting back to... So the thing with the AAF is that they were trying to be a development league for the NFL. The XFL is not. Okay? And there are definitely some weird rules to the XFL to make this game, to be honest, a little more entertaining and less NFL-like. And that's Vince's whole thing, is he always likes to compete. He competed in the late 90s with another professional wrestling company. He tried to create the XFL, which was a completely different type of product back in 2001. It was somewhat successful in its first couple of games, much like the AAF, but it did actually finish out the season and then failed because it got too sexualized and stuff like that. But here's some interesting rules from the XFL that's going to be definitely contrary to the NFL. Fair catches will not be recognized, which there's going to be a lot of balls that drop against players, but that's the potential big hits, right? Yeah. A lot of football fans like that. That's an interesting one right there. Much like the AAF, the extra point, there's no extra point kick. I believe it's going to be a 2-point conversion. The kickoffs, the players are separated by there's less room or something like that. So again, potential for more violence, I guess, on the field to go to that. The clock will run the entire game. It's a continuous clock like soccer, except for the 2-minute warning. So You're talking about some high-paced football, late in these games, stuff like that. Very interesting rules. And the officiating's different. Instant replays can only be 30 seconds. Now, these rules can be changed again because there's a year, but these are just kind of the preliminary things that have been thrown out there.
Okay.
And there was one other thing. I'm trying to look it up and see what the other thing was. Oh, yeah. All players behind the line of scrimmage will be eligible receivers. So the XFL ain't some development league for the NFL.
No.
It's definitely going to be very interesting. And with more money thrown at it, likely more advertising coming because there's $500 million extended in this league.
At least. That's just from Big
I
Man.
honestly think the XFL will at least be more successful than the AAF. I don't know how successful it will be, but I'm predicting right now based on these rules, these interesting concepts, and the fact that the AAF completely failed, I think the XFL is going to at least succeed in its first year. From there on, the marketing's got to be different, and I think they should market certain stars too. The AAF didn't do that. You can be a development league, but then they didn't get to deal with the NFL, so nobody cared, right? If the XFL wants to be successful, they need to market players, commercials, stuff like that. That's what the AAF didn't do. They just kind of were like a minor league football team, and people don't watch minor league baseball, people don't watch the G League, and people don't watch the AHL either. Okay, and people don't watch Division II football and college football. So why would we watch a minor league football team that doesn't even market its stars, right? We had to find out from SportsCenter that Johnny Manziel was going, So I think at least for the XFL, that's what they should do. They also are going to have a partnership with DraftKings and stuff like that for sports betting because Vince McMahon has a stake in DraftKings as well. So what are your thoughts on the XFL? Because obviously I know a lot about this because I just follow the product and stuff like that. But what are your thoughts after just kind of hearing some of the stuff I said? What do you think they have to do, and do you think they'll be more successful than the
So really,
AAF?
I from everything that you've just said, right, and the rules and regulations and how the game is going to be played and how it's not,
some
traditional.
Of that is,
right, but it's not necessarily going to be traditional NFL football. I mean, every offensive player will be eligible to catch a pass, even in the center. It's a different way. But listen, I think Vince McMahon and the XFL, the fact that they failed so miserably in their first go around, which maybe, some people are forgetting, and obviously Vince McMahon wants a lot of people to forget, that he kind of, I think, has to go above and beyond, right? You have to make it a little bit different. You have to make it more exciting. We all understand safety and everything like that, but with these rules about no fair catches and the potential for more hits and more bigger hits, I think Vince McMahon is stretching out that line, that fine line of, okay, safety to just wanting to make things more fun, and at the end of the day it comes down to ratings, and it comes down to, are people going to watch? Right. So the one thing I am interested in, when this league does officially start, when will it be played? Is it going to be in conjunction with the NFL?
No, I think it's going to be the same as the AAF.
It would be it would be when the NFL is in its offseason.
Literally, I believe the same scheduling as the AAF was.
Okay, yeah. That's a good thing. I don't, when the NFL is going on, I don't necessarily want the XFL going on as well. Not to say that the XFL players are going to get a chance to go into the NFL, but exactly, no one would watch.
Unless you did, the only way that would work is if you did it in the middle of the week.
Yeah, you have to have games like
Wednesday,
Friday, because see, now the NFL takes over Thursday.
But if you do games Tuesday, Wednesday, that could work. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. Again, we're speculating. It's bad. We shouldn't do this.
We are.
But that might work because you have Monday Night Football.
Right.
Tuesday, Wednesday, you have another football league that's going on. Maybe it's a little more fun to watch. Yeah. Craziness, betting behind it. That could work, but they're not doing that. So
here's where I'm already behind the and behind is in like I'm already kind of on board with the XFL as opposed to the AAF. Is you're right. The AAF, they basically got shut down from the NFL. Yeah. Right.
And that was their only plan.
Multiple times, basically saying, the NFL saying we are not going to back you. You are not our development league. The XFL saying, we're not the development league. We don't want to be the development league for the NFL. We're going to go out and we're going to do our own thing. Vince McMahon, like I said, already saying that he's going to commit to at most $500 million. Yeah. That's just himself. That's not other investors. Yeah. That's not other people coming on and bringing money as well. So the fact that there seems to already be a better financial backing with this league, and it hasn't even begun yet, is a reason to be intrigued and want to kind of know more about it. So it'll be interesting to see what the level of play is, because at the end of the day, you want to see competitive play and you want to see good players on the field. You can make all these rules and you can trigger it and make it, how do I say this? You can make it, good for the players. But at the end of the day, if you don't have good talent on the field, you're not going to have a good product and you're not going to have good viewership.
No,
so,
I agree. And they do need to go out and try to get the Colin Kaepernicks and the Johnny Manziels and anything they can do. And so originally when the XFL was announced, I think Vince McMahon, because it was essentially his own thing that he created. Now he has people behind him, Andrew Luck's father, Oliver Luck, a lot of other NFL people that kind of got in his ear and told him that's not a good idea. He initially came out right after people were kneeling and all this stuff when Kaepernick went down and said, we're only going to have good character guys and all this stuff. That's been backed away recently, which is smart, to be honest. I think they're still not going to allow political statements during the game, which I really have no problem with, to be honest, too. That might alienate some players to join. But I think in the grand scheme of things, that's probably good for your product if you're not having all these political statements going on in their game. But everything else, as far as the character guys, I think they realize, some of these character guys probably could play in our bad character guys probably could play in our league, and stuff like that. But I was gonna, so there one more thing you talked about ratings and stuff like that. Something in January of this year said that ESPN is in talks with ESPN, ABC, and possibly Fox Sports. I'll tell you this: they are signing a giant deal for one of their wrestling shows to start in October. On Fox, that's worth $2 billion. Jeez. Here's what they could do. If Fox is totally in on Vince McMahon in a way, they could put AAF games on Fox Sports 1, maybe some of the games on Fox, and you have the professional wrestling talking about the XFL and the XFL talking, and it could be a conjoined thing and it could work out. So I just think the XFL is in position to be more successful than the AAF. We'll see what comes out of it. Again, it's not going to be the NFL, but if they create a legitimate alternative and eventually this thing is successful and players don't like the BS that comes with the NFL a lot, you never know. There could be some players that end up jumping over to these kind of leagues. That's what the hope is, that you create competition, which creates ratings, and then overall it's fun to watch because you have people, shouting at each other. So we went a little long with those two things we talked about right there. I didn't think the AAF discussion would go that long, but it did. To finish off this segment, what were some of the things you noticed from the MLB season this past week? Some players, standout things. What did you notice from this past week? From Thursday to today, Wednesday.
Well, obviously, Game 1 when the Dodgers come out and hit 8 home runs.
I was a little excited about that. Yeah.
A little bit. It's almost like the Bombers, man. These guys they came out and it was like, oh my gosh, these guys are for real. And then I believe it was a couple nights ago when Kenley Jansen actually came out and had a nice save it. And after all the slack that I've been giving to him about he's not the same type of closer and everything. So speaking specifically on the Dodgers, excited about this team and about what they can do. Once again, on a sad note, there was another fan who was sent to the hospital, and I believe he's on life support because there was another fight that took place at Dodger Stadium. So once again, the rep at Dodger Stadium takes another hit.
Terrible.
But as far as the play goes, they are looking very good. To stay out west, the Angels have once again. They lost their 6th consecutive opening day game. They are 1-5 now. They are, I believe, open. They get their home opener tomorrow. They were on the road in Oakland and in Seattle. So, as far as our West Coast teams and the teams here, the Dodgers are looking like the Dodgers and the contending team that we think they are.
They lost some games, but they still look
right. And so far the Angels are basically the Angels. Now they have had a couple. Listen, that Justin Upton got injured, and they have had a couple pitchers already go down, but they're just looking like the same old Angels team. I saw a stat. I believe I was watching the game yesterday, to where so far this season. They have not scored a run up until the game yesterday. The first 4 games of the season, they hadn't scored a run in the first 6 innings. All their runs came in the 7th through the 9th. So it's like when you get off to a slow start like that, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. And with the not so good pitching that you have, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to go 6 or 7 innings without giving up
The
runs.
pitching's actually been good. They haven't been blown out one game.
No,
The
but
pitching's been solid. Like, for example, yesterday's game, we're talking about Tuesday against Seattle. They have great performance from their technical number one guy, Trevor Cahill. He goes into the 7th inning. It's a 1-0 score, and he gives up. They score a run finally in the 7th inning, and Seattle ties it up. And then the next inning, reliever comes in, home run Seattle. They win 2-1. The Angels with Mike Trout should be able to score more than 1 run in 7 innings, like you're saying. Besides yesterday's game where Jonathan Lucroy hit a double over the center fielder's head, they didn't score a run? Are you kidding me? In the first 6 innings, I didn't even notice that. I watched all the games too. That's just super disappointing. I want to get to some fun stuff though. I mean, hopefully the Angels turn around and they do. Texas,
I hope so. I didn't mean to be on a downer like
it's
that.
fine.
I'm just saying.
No, it's fine. But so some interesting things that have happened so far. So on Tuesday, you had Bryce Harper return to Washington for the first time, and to be honest, I thought he'd get a good reaction. Nope, got completely booed by the Washington crowd and cheered when Max Scherzer struck him out. First of all, I had faced Max Scherzer in his first start, which is not easy. But Bryce Harper, he strikes out twice, ends up with 3 hits at the end in a 458-foot home run. Now, they got blown out, so it didn't end up mattering. But Harper does get some redemption. He also hit 2 big home runs in Philadelphia, too. So, very interesting start for Bryce Harper. Like you mentioned, Dodgers hit 8 home runs on the opening day, and as of Wednesday, have 17. And 5 from Cody Bellinger, who actually leads the National League in home runs right now. Christian Yelich hit home runs in his first 4 games.
Wow.
Your MVP pick.
Yeah.
My MVP pick, Paul Goldschmidt, has 4 home runs and hit 3 home runs in his second game of the season.
He did.
So
we're on par.
We're on par. Our Cy Young's, I had Walker Buehler. He gave up like 6 runs in his first game. Not looking
It's
super
early.
good.
It's okay.
You had Chris Sale for the
I
AL
got
team.
Chris Sale.
He gave up like 7 runs his first game.
Yeah,
So
Boston
we're not
got
talking
whooped
about.
by Seattle.
Boston hasn't been playing good at all
No.
to start the season. I believe they might be 1-5 too, if I'm not mistaken. And the only reason they won a game is because the Seattle closer got hurt and gave up a bunch of runs in the final inning. So weird starts, but do we really think Boston's going to end up being a horrible team? Probably not. So that interesting stuff. And then Mike Trout, Manny Machado still have not homered.
Right.
As of this point.
Really quickly, Robert Acuna Jr. signs that 8-year, $100 million extension with the Braves.
Exactly.
To stay with him through at least 2026, I believe.
It's ridiculous.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because what we're seeing now in the MLB is the exact opposite of what we saw in the free agency period, where players are now scared of the free agency period, so they're signing long-term deals and somewhat taking team-friendly deals. You look at Ronald Acuna, he's a star in the making. He's 21 years old. He's now signed till he's 29 with 2 club options from when he's 30 and 31. And he's getting paid what would be an average of, do the math, it's less than $20 million, and I believe less than $15 million. I'm bad at math, so I'm not going to try to figure it out. But it's definitely a team-friendly deal. It's just a trend that we're seeing. A lot of other players have signed these quick, long-term deals to avoid arbitration, to avoid the first couple years in free agency. Mookie Betts has come out and said that he still wants to be a free agent. Chris Davis will likely be a free agent for the fact that he plays for Oakland. Oakland doesn't sign guys to big contracts, so you could probably expect him. But besides that, almost every other player has been locked up so far. So this is interesting to me because Acuna Jr. now is going to be sort of the face of the Atlanta Braves, because Freddie Freeman, I think, is signed until 2022. This deal goes a lot longer than that. So for the Braves, great. For Acuna Jr., debatable, because I'm sure he likes having a contract for 8 years, but he's definitely not going to be getting paid what he's worth by the end of that deal, because I really think he's going to be one of the stars.
Yeah, he did come out and just said, he said, I have no regrets. He said you can't predict.
He's going to make $100 million.
Right.
And let's say he gets hurt tomorrow and is a fringe player and sucks, still gets $100 million.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't fault a guy for taking this, but it's like, wow, what could he have gotten
seriously
on the open market at the age of 24?
No, exactly.
So,
it would have been really interesting. And just 3 more things I want to mention. Fernando Tatis for San Diego Padres, top prospect, has been killing it so far, has a home run. crowd starting to get behind him and stuff like that. And then also in that same game in San Diego, Zach Greinke hit 2 home runs last night in a game and literally led the Diamondbacks to a win. Madison Bumgarner had a home run against the Dodgers last night.
That's not surprising. He's a beast.
He's a beast. Yeah, he hits a lot of home runs. Gave up a grand slam, but hit a home run himself. So a lot of interesting things happening. It's always good when the MLB can kind of show out and impress its first week of go-around of play. So... and I've also won a lot in DraftKings, too, betting on this baseball. So been
it's always good when you can win some money,
successful so far betting on the old baseball. All right, we need to go to break. We're going to be coming back with Do You Care? Kind of jumping into the stuff we haven't talked about so far. So I know there's some NFL stuff for sure coming up on this. So we'll jump into it. This is the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio, on the TuneIn app, and on Jared's Facebook Live. We'll be right back.
We've been making people aware that there's something up with the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. And Wilson now says he wants his contract by April 15. He's made it clear via his visit to Jimmy Fallon he wants to be the highest paid player in football. So if you're the Seahawks, what do you do about this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this would be something, again, I don't expect anything to be done by April 15th. Do you? I mean, I don't think that's even realistic at this point. It doesn't sound like, I feel like we would have heard rumors that things were, farther down the road as far as contract talks and things like that.
Russell Wilson wants an extension with Seattle by April 15th, or if, according to Colin Cowherd, he's going to go to the New York Giants. That's his big thing. He was right about something else, though, the other day, so he might actually know something's up.
Hell no. Not happening.
I hope
20 seconds.
I hope it does, Jerry.
No, thank you.
This is a rivalry between us that I really hope he goes to the Giants.
This is a good deal for Kentucky, and I also believe because it's such, he's done so well there and seems happy there, a good deal for Calipari.
Robert Quinn, welcome to the Dallas Cowboys. Just signed. What's your first impressions of everything and just kind of taking it all in?
That statement everyone says everything is bigger in Texas is pretty much living up to its motto. So it's definitely a great facility. From players, coaches, everyone been welcoming from day one. So it's a great family atmosphere. So excited to get started.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Nick Nina.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared Smith, what time is it right now?
It is Do You Care?
It is Do You Care? It is the first one of April of 2019. Never will we have a first Do You Care of 2019 April, if that makes any sense.
All right. I
screwed
like
up
it.
that part right there
like
for
it.
sure.
It's all good, man.
It's Do You Care? We got hockey. We got college basketball. Not that we've talked about that for 40 minutes already on the show, but we have a stadium to talk about on this. We got an airline. It's going to be great. And, of course, we have the NFL. You can't do a Cover 2 podcast without the NFL. So, enough of my talk. Jared, you're going to get the first question here.
Let's jump right in.
Your first question is, do you care that the Dallas Cowboys, you know a little bit about them,
A little bit.
Traded for Robert Quinn?
I do care, and I think this is a bigger trade than some are looking at it as. And now listen, the Cowboys only gave up a 2026 round pick, so that's next season,
Nothing.
and it's
They
a
traded
6th round pick for Robert Quinn, who is a former multi-Pro Bowler. Obviously made a career for himself with the Rams, and then was traded to let go and signed with the Dolphins. So he's still got a lot of tread on his tires. I believe he's been in the league for like 9 or 10 years, but he is a solid guy that can still produce anywhere from 8 to 10 sacks in a game. And listen, I think the Cowboys did this for a multitude of reasons. Number one, Randy Gregory is currently suspended.
Yep.
And they were looking for Gregory to be a real depth guy this year. Now, the Cowboys are still very optimistic that Gregory will be able to play this year, but there's no guarantee with that, right? You have Taco Charlton, who the Cowboys drafted as their first-round draft pick a couple years ago, and while he's been a solid rotation player, I'm not so sure that they are ready to anoint him the starting defensive end on that line. You obviously have DeMarcus Lawrence right now, who the Cowboys have franchise tagged for the 2nd consecutive year. Obviously, both sides want to come to a contract agreement, but as of right now, there is no agreement. So I think this was a very much like an insurance policy in getting Robert Quinn. Now, you can't expect him to come in and get you 15 or 20 sacks and be the sack leader of the NFL. But if he can be a potential starter day one, and more than likely a role player going on throughout the season, I think this is a great trade for the Cowboys. Hopefully, you can have DeMarcus Lawrence on one side, Robert Quinn on the other, along with the other plethora of talent that they have. I'm very, very solid, along with the draft picks that they will get. Very happy with that potential lineup on the field. Nick, do you care that the NHL season ends this weekend?
No, I don't, because both the local teams here, the Anaheim Ducks and Los Angeles Kings, have had very bad seasons. The Kings not only have had a bad season, but now after the win last night, do not have the top odds in the lottery to get the draft. So I believe the lottery is sometime here in April when they announce it. In the NHL one, I think they only you only can switch the number 1 pick. It's not like the NBA where everyone's in a lottery. Everyone's in a lottery for the number 1 pick, and then you all stay the same. So the Kings, I believe, can get no worse than the 3rd pick in the NHL draft, but it would have been nice to have those top odds. And then the Anaheim Ducks are not going to make the playoffs. But the reason I don't care is because I'm more than likely not going to be following the NHL playoffs as much this year. But like I mentioned before, the Tampa Bay Lightning have been dominating the NHL. They need to win the Stanley Cup Finals this year. They're clearly the best team. If not them, I want to see a team that hasn't won it before. Maybe a Winnipeg, Nashville, something like that's kind of been in the mix for a while.
Well, Tampa Bay needs to win something because we know the Rays aren't going to win anything.
No, the Rays aren't going to win anything, and the Buccaneers with Bruce Arians, I know, are going to get to the championship game and then are going to lose. So, just had a bad flashback there.
Yeah, a little bit, man.
All right.
I sensed some anger in that. It's okay.
Do you care, Jared, that John Calipari has signed a lifetime deal with the University of Kentucky?
I do care, and this one is interesting because when this report first came out, the headlines were lifetime deal. So it's like, for the rest of his life, John Calipari, even what happens when he retires, is he still going to be like the associated coach? Is he going to be still getting paid millions and millions of dollars?
Yeah.
So John Calipari came out in one of his radio interviews right after this happened and kind of clarified things, basically saying, listen, yes, I will finish my career with Kentucky and I will retire as the head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. But basically when he retires, he will then go into like an ambassador role with the team. So in a sense, he will always be connected with Kentucky. And I'm sure he will continue to, get paid through them, but not at the rate of the $9.2 million that he's currently making right now as the highest highest paid college basketball coach. So he has taken 4 teams to the Final Four. He won the national championship in 2012. Obviously, he's being highly courted by UCLA after they let Alford go, and UCLA has been not only going after Calipari, but Virginia Tech coach Tony Bennett as well. So UCLA is struggling to find a replacement right now, and also struggling, with their recruits.
Hey, they have a pretty good roster next
year. Right, but John Calipari, obviously, he has familiarity with Kentucky, and the fact that they, were very close to making it to the Final Four again this year. The chances of a Duke team or another team getting the top 3 recruits again is very unlikely. So Calipari, I'm sure, is very fired up to go out and bring in the best talent for next year. So good for him. He's able to get his money and stay in Kentucky, and I think it's good for college basketball that even though you want to see parity, and obviously in the tournament we always see that, but when you have the Kentuckys of the world, the Dukes, the North Carolinas, when the top teams, the teams that you associate with college basketball are playing well and they have highly rated coaches on their staff, I think it's only a good thing for college basketball. So good for Kentucky and obviously good for John.
By the way, that quote you just said, he got his money and stayed in Kentucky. I think that's the first time anybody's ever said that, ever.
Probably.
Nobody stays in Kentucky.
Yeah, no one really stays, unless it's college basketball.
Unless it's college basketball.
You're not doing it.
But nobody even stays at Kentucky either.
Oh, okay.
P.J. Washington and now John Calipari are the only 2 that have done. Yeah.
Apparently. Nick, do you care that United Airlines potentially will be pulling their naming rights deal with the LA Coliseum?
Yes, I do care about this, Jared, because the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum has hosted Super Bowls, the Olympics, USC football, the Los Angeles Rams, playoff games, and it's been called the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. And it's one of the most historic things and one of the most visually attractive things in the city of Los Angeles. It's one of those things that you see and you know, oh, that's LA, right? It does not need to be named United Airlines Memorial Coliseum. Now, United Airlines also believes this. Now, it more than likely has to do almost all exclusively with money, but United Airlines is realizing that they might be kind of stepping on some veterans' toes here and stepping on the city of Los Angeles' toes with this. And so more than likely this deal will not happen. I don't want it to happen. I want it to be called the LA Memorial Coliseum. Some stadiums don't need names, right? Name the field United Airlines or Los Angeles or United Airlines Field at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. We've seen that done with Sun Devil Stadium in Arizona. We've seen that done with the Rose Bowl. You don't need to change the name of the stadium, though. Change the field, do whatever, change up the money, but I definitely want that name staying. Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. I know it's just a stadium, but that thing is one of the most historic places in the United States, and we don't need to be putting an airline, much less an airline that has a lot of problems itself, on one of the most historic stadiums in the United States. Jared, do you care that Tom Brady faked his retirement on April Fool's Day?
No, I don't care. Now, if this were actually true, if Tom Brady were actually retiring...
I thought it was true. I got tricked.
You got tricked?
I got tricked.
Did you not know it was April Fool's?
No, I did. I tricked other people, but I got tricked by that, and I got tricked by someone saying that Rosen had been traded to the Giants for a fifth round pick, and I got pissed.
I'd be happy about both those things, right? Rosen getting traded to the Giants and Tom Brady retiring. That's a great football day for me. Anyways... As far as Tom Brady goes, no, listen, he finally just joined Twitter, and his first tweet was about him retiring and how he was potentially going to go back to his baseball days and play baseball in the major leagues and sign this ridiculous contract with the MLB. I mean, come on, Tom Brady, like, you could have come up with a better tweet than that, or a better April Fool's joke than that. How about head coach Sean McVay of the Rams doing an April Fool's joke on newly head coach Cliff Kingsbury of the Cardinals. And for those of you who don't know, I'm just going to quickly say this one. They were apparently all at a dinner together, and Sean McVay got one of his friends to, I believe it was like in his phone, pretend to be Roger Goodell.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that friend texted Sean McVay, thinking, pretending to be Roger Goodell, saying, hey, you guys are tampering right now with, who was the player that they were at dinner with, do you know?
Oh, shoot. Patrick Mahomes.
They were so they're all at dinner with Patrick Mahomes.
Because Mahomes is Kingsbury, it was his old coach.
Yes, so Cliff Kingsbury, Patrick Mahomes, and Sean McVay were all at dinner, and, Sean McVay gets this text message from Roger Goodell saying, I know you guys are all at dinner. This is tampering. You're all losing draft picks. So he immediately tells Cliff Kingsbury, hey, man, you need to call.
You're losing number one draft pick.
You need to call your guys right now. You're about to lose draft picks. And apparently Cliff Kingsbury was like puckered up real quick and was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose the number one overall pick.
It's a good joke.
So that's such a good joke. That's a good April Fool's joke, okay? Not Tom Brady coming out and saying he's retiring when we all know that he's not retiring, even though he's won 6 championships and he's got nothing left to prove. So, you would think in reality he would want to retire, being that he's past the age of 40. But no, Tom Brady is not retiring. Yeah. That was just
I'll tell you my trick. So if you don't know, if you've been following my other podcasts, I'm going to New York City this weekend to go to WrestleMania, which is the pro wrestling thing. Their pro wrestling Super Bowl, and I told the 2 people I'm going with that I was then going to get there a day and a half late. We're going to have to miss all this stuff because my flight had been canceled and stuff like that. And I got one of them to believe me. The other was not paying attention as much. Was not really focused on the text. But I could have kept it going. And I decided to quit because my stomach hurt. I just didn't feel like doing it anymore. But I got them to believe it too. So it was somewhat.
That's admirable. It's good. It's good.
No, yeah.
It's better than Tom Brady. Almost anything's better than Tom Brady.
It's a good point.
Yeah. Nick, last question for you, and we're sticking with the NFL. Do you care that Russell Wilson has come out and stated that he wants a new contract with the Seattle Seahawks by April 15th?
Oh, yeah, I care about this, Jared. With Russell Wilson being the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, any chance or any news potentially about him leaving the Seattle Seahawks and going to another division is nice to hear. And this obviously, in the grand scheme of the NFL, was obviously a huge story. And I believe if anything happens over this next weekend, we're going to be talking about this either on the next podcast or 2 weeks from now when this decision is finalized. Either we're going to be talking about an extension or we're going to be talking about him potentially going to a new team. So this is big news. We just kind of want to mention that because it's obviously on the horizon right now. And he did come out and say this. And this is the first time he's kind of ever said something like this, too. He's generally a mild-mannered guy, but I've seen people bring interesting things up like, you know, his wife is very famous, potentially even more famous than him. And Seattle is not where super famous people live. So that could also come into it. A lot of people don't think about it that way, but, you know, his wife might want to be in New York, maybe, or something like that. I know Jared doesn't like that, but I would love that personally, and I'd be very happy, and I'd show up with my Cardinals jersey if that happens. No. Odell leaves, Russell Wilson goes into New York. No, I'm kidding. But it's a rumor where he might go, but it's definitely news, and we just want to mention that. I do care because it's Seattle Seahawks, and they're in the Arizona Cardinals division. So, but we need to move on. We need to go to our final segment. The NBA season is wrapping up in about a week and a half, and we know about 13 of the playoff teams for sure, and there's about 4 fighting for spots in the Eastern Conference, 4 or 5 fighting for spots in the Eastern Conference. So we'll tell you who they are. We'll tell you who we think has advantages, what matchups could benefit some teams, and who we think might win the national championship, the NBA Finals, not named the Golden State Warriors. We've done this before, but now the season is kind of wrapping up, and we really do know who the real players are right now. We'll talk about it. So that's going to be on the other side of this quick break. This is a Cover 2 podcast at OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, and Facebook Live.
Look at what this group has done since Steve Kerr has taken over. 317 wins, that NBA record, 73 wins back in 2015 and 16. 4 finals appearances, 3 world championships, and Steve Kerr said before the game, we're as good as we've ever been with how they've been playing here the last few weeks.
But so Eastern Conference, pretty much all of the seeds are locked up in the top 5. Like Boston, Indiana are more likely going to play each other. It just depends on who gets home field advantage.
Right.
And then the Bucks, Raptors, 76ers, they're 1, 2, 3, and they're probably going to end up 1, 2, 3.
There's something about Harden this year.
He's played like an MVP after winning MVP last year.
James Harden, he's unguardable right now.
Since December 13th against the Lakers when he dropped 50, has averaged about 40.
When he started this streak, they were the 14th best team in the Western Conference.
When it was done, they were in line for home court in the first round in the tougher conference, as they are now, despite playing 18 games without Chris Paul and 15 without Clint Capella.
If he doesn't do this, it's over.
We're running out of words to say what he's doing because what he's doing is unprecedented.
This is an MVP caliber night.
And I will say it again, if other guys could do it, they would do it.
We're back here on the Cover 2 podcast for the final segment of the show, and we are switching topics, going to the NBA. We're going to mainly talk about the Eastern Conference, and there are 5 teams right now battling for the last 3 playoff spots. We will get into the Western Conference as well, but the Western Conference already has its 8 teams locked into the playoffs. Not necessarily the seedings, but the 8 teams that will be in the playoffs are already locked in. Towards the end, we will give you our MVP predictions, as well as our NBA Finals and championship predictions as well.
Early predictions.
Yeah, so early predictions. So let's jump right into it, though. So the 5 teams in the Eastern Conference that are battling for the 3 playoff spots. We've got the Detroit Pistons, Brooklyn Nets, Miami Heat, Orlando Magic, and the Charlotte Hornets. As it stands today, the Pistons, Nets, and Heat, in that exact order, are sitting at 6, 7, and 8. The Orlando Magic that are sitting on the outside along with the Hornets. The Magic are just a half a game out right now, and the Hornets right now are 3.5 games out. So,
yeah, Hornets have an outside chance. It would really take a miracle for them to make the playoffs, but they're not eliminated, so we stopped to mention them.
With 4 or 5 games left, the Hornets would kind of have to go undefeated, and some of those other top teams that we just mentioned would have to collapse a little bit and lose a couple in a row. So not necessarily good odds for the Hornets, but the Magic, like I said, are literally a half game behind the Heat and could very easily, with 1 win or 2 wins in a row, jump the Heat for that 8th and final playoff spot. So a lot of interesting things going on in the East right now. Nick, give me your thoughts about these 5 teams. Who do you kind of believe in, or do you have a team that you think in this seed could really kind of make some noise in the playoffs?
What's interesting about this is, so you have the 5 top seeds, Milwaukee, Toronto, and 76ers. That's going to be 1, 2, 3. And then you have Boston and Indiana playing in a series. They haven't determined who's going to be the home team in that series, but they're going to play each other. To be honest, I really don't see any of these teams on the bottom having a chance to advance the next round. I'm just being completely honest. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets could catch fire, but they're going to have to play, the 76ers. If one of these teams was the 5th seed, I think they could beat the Pacers or Celtics. But the fact that they're going to have to play the 76ers, Raptors, or Bucks, I don't think they have a chance. So, unfortunately, these teams will make the playoffs, but I don't really think they have a chance after that just because of the way those top 3 seeds are locked. It's just going to be difficult. The best team is the Nets, I think, in the bottom of that, and I don't think they'll miss the playoffs. But I don't think any of them really have a chance. Unfortunately, that's just the way the NBA is right now. And when you look at it, there's Boston Celtics and Indiana Pacers have 32 losses, then the 6th seed has 38. So there is clearly a difference between those teams. No, I actually don't think any.
Yeah, I was actually trying to trick you a little bit there.
Yeah.
Listen, out of all those 5 teams that I just mentioned who are fighting for those 3 playoff spots, I really like the Brooklyn Nets, and a lot of it is because of D'Angelo Russell and how he's been able to literally elevate his game.
Who he used to play for again?
Oh, that'd be the Los Angeles Lakers.
That'd be the Los Angeles Lakers.
That's right. But guess what? You know what? At the end of the day, for this one particularly, I can't really be mad at that because if this would not have happened, if this trade wouldn't have happened, it wouldn't have worked out in the Lakers. I don't really know if they would have been able to get LeBron James and some of the other players they have. So, listen, D'Angelo Russell, he was with the Lakers for a little bit, and he never really showed this type of flash. I'm glad that he's finally, elevated his play to all-star caliber because I think, coming out as the number 1 draft pick of the Lakers, that's what they expected of him. It just took him a couple years to finally get going, but I'm glad that he finally did, and he's definitely leading his team. I mean, the way that they're sitting at 500, they're 39-39, so it's not like this is a great team.
No, yeah.
But when you think of the Brooklyn Nets, the last 6-7 years, they've been garbage. They've been at the bottom of the league. They've always had a top draft pick, and even if they do make the playoffs, they get bounced out very, very quick. So this team is probably the best team that Brooklyn has had since they've been resurrected, where they have the best chance to actually do something in the playoffs and potentially win a series. Problem is, sitting in the 7th seed right now, you're going up against Toronto.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a tall order.
You're not beating them.
No, you're in a 7-game series. No.
Yeah.
If you're talking about 1 or 2 games, yes, I can see Brooklyn doing it. A full 7-game series with Toronto having home court, I don't see it happening. I'm not betting on it.
No, exactly. And I don't want to spend too much time on this East Conference because I think the Western Conference is very interesting because you have, I think, 8 very solid teams. And like we're mentioning with these Eastern Conference teams, these bottom 3 teams would not make the playoffs if they were in the West.
No,
they
listen.
They would
Oklahoma City right now, who's sitting in the 8th seed in the Western Conference, is at 45-33, right? So they're 12 wins above 500, as to where the Miami Heat are 1 game below 500 and they're in the playoffs, right? So even though the Eastern Conference, I think that the competition has gotten better, right? The Milwaukee Bucks, the 76ers, 2 teams who in years past you would not necessarily think of as being real contenders, they have kind of elevated themselves and
100%.
Along with the Celtics and the Pacers and the Raptors. So the East is getting better, but still when you look at it, the West definitely is more competition and better overall.
Looking at like the Sacramento Kings are 38-40, so are the Orlando Magic.
Right.
And they're in the 9th spot. And the Los Angeles Lakers are 35-43.
Hey, if the Lakers were in the East, they would still technically be in this game.
It'd be close because they have the Hornets record essentially.
Yeah. But hey, they wouldn't be eliminated right now.
Well, they would have played easier opponents too. They probably would be in. So yeah, if maybe the Lakers should just move back to Minneapolis, something like that. Go back to the Eastern Conference.
Oh my!
I don't know why I'm hating on Lakers so much.
I know, a little bit. You got some Laker hate going on right now.
Well, you know what? They disappoint me, and then they win every game when they're eliminated from the playoffs.
I know.
So it's
LeBron,
just,
yeah.
It's not their year.
No.
Let's go Clippers, right? Okay, so
oh,
so Eastern Conference will be interesting. Like I mentioned, I personally believe that when you get to the second round of the playoffs, you're going to be looking at those top 5 seeds as the teams they're in. That they're in that second round. So I don't really think that the bottom matters. I'll tell you this, though. I do want the Miami Heat to make it, though, because I want Dwayne Wade to have at least a chance.
True.
To potentially play his last games, and his last games not to be fighting and losing a playoff spot. Like, that would be very disappointing to me. So although the Orlando Magic have been in the playoffs for a long time, I still want I do want the standings to kind of stay the way they are right now. So, but moving to the West, the Western Conference is very, very interesting. Now, yesterday, Tuesday, you had the Warriors beat the Denver Nuggets. That means they win the season series against Denver, and now they're 2 games up. So we're here at the Cover 2 Podcast going to give the Warriors the number 1 seed. So you have that. And then the Nuggets, more than likely, although it's not for sure, are more than likely going to get the 2 seed. Then from there on, it's crazy. Because you have the Rockets and the Portland Trailblazers, who have very similar records in the 3-4 seeds. You have the Jazz and Clippers, who are 2 games back of both of them. And then you have the Spurs and Thunder, who are 2 games back of the Jazz and Clippers. So, to be honest, every single team, the Spurs and Thunder could end up being the 5 and 6 seeds. The Jazz and Clippers could actually somewhat be the 3-4 seeds in a way, because the Clippers do play the Houston Rockets. So it's so it's kind of craziness. And even this, if the Nuggets keep losing, the Rockets or Portland Trailblazers could be the 2 seeds. So we're not going to predict playoff matchups at all. It's almost impossible with the West right now. I'll tell you this, I know the Clippers probably had the most difficult schedule to finish off the season. They have the Warriors, Jazz, Rockets, and Lakers, who've been playing hot.
Lakers, hello, watch out.
No, without LeBron, but I'm just saying they've won like 3 or 4 in a row. They're not like giving up on the season like some other teams have. Knicks, Suns, but so the Clippers I could unfortunately see maybe dropping to that 8th seed from a 5th or 6th seed. But what do you see from the Western Conference here? Is it just Warriors and then everybody else, or have the Warriors not impressed you as much this season? Is there something going on with them? What do you see here with this Western Conference?
Well, first of all, no, I don't think the Warriors have impressed as much as they have in years past. And listen, I think this is just the human element that is going on with this team. When you've won multiple championships and back-to-back, right, the majority of the players on this team are all multi-year champions, including Kevin Durant, who joined this team a couple years ago. I think it's very, very tough for as great as these players are, knowing that they're great. I think that even hurts this is the fact that during the regular season, especially like the beginning to the middle part of the season, I think it just gets boring for these guys, man. They're like, listen, we know we're going to make the playoffs, even though we're in the tougher conference. We know we're going to be a top seed. All we have to do is try to get through without without major injuries. And for the most part, they've been able to do that. DeMarcus Cousins is coming back and obviously a very, very nice addition to this team. And although they've had some injuries in Knicks and stuff, they haven't really had a serious one to where one of their star players has been out for the whole year. So in saying that, the Warriors, I think, are right where everyone else wants them. They're 2 games up, the number 1 seed in the West. They are, well, technically they're not the number 1 seed in the NBA. But for them, it's like, all we got to do is get in the playoffs.
And now they're number 1 seed somehow.
Who's going to beat us in a 7-game series, right? With our full arsenal. Now, obviously the Denver Nuggets are probably the biggest surprise of this year, being at 51-26. They have a great team. They ain't beaten the Warriors in a 7-game series. I'm sorry, it's not happening. They don't have the superstars necessary to go up against the 4-headed monster, if you want to include DeMarcus Cousins with the Warriors as that 4th monster. So the Houston Rockets would really be the team that I could say, all right, they match up the best with the Warriors is trying to dethrone them. But in reality, talking about the Warriors, I think they get bored. And it's just a human element. I'm sorry, as much as you want to say these guys are professionals and they go out here and they play their hearts out every single night, you're going to take nights off, man. If you're going up against a team that you just know is not as good as you, and if they have injuries, it's just, some nights you're going to say, I'm just going to take this night off a little bit. If I'm Kevin Durant, I'm going to go out and score 20 and 10 instead of 30 and 15. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Steph can get 40 to that.
I'm serious. That's just what you do. And so I think that's what this team has done. And I'm sure Steve Kerr, obviously going, towards the end of the year, has wanted this team to get a little bit of momentum because just in like college basketball where we saw Auburn, the fact that they've been able to ride that momentum and look where they are now, you want to go into the playoffs on a hot streak and with some momentum and riding high. So I think they're, probably the last couple weeks they've been trying to rev things up. Usually you can't just flip that switch. The fact that this team is so great and they have so many great weapons, I think they're one of the few teams in sports history that can potentially do that. So, you never know, but at the end of the day, I'm not worried about the Warriors. Like I said, I think in the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets are really the only team that would challenge the Warriors in a true 7-game series.
I agree with that, too. Houston, to me, is the second best team in the West right now. Denver's still been great at home since we made that we talked about the fact that they only lost like 3 or 4 games at home. They still have only lost 3 since then. So they're still a great team, and their opponents at home coming up aren't the most difficult either, so they'll probably end up the season with only 6 or 7 losses at home. But again, are they really, after going through 2 playoff rounds, going to beat the Warriors in a 7-game series? Where the Warriors are playing the relatively more easy opponents. Although I don't think there's a single easy opponent in this Western Conference. You look at the Warriors last couple of years, sometimes you could say, they lost teams that lost point guards, or they played teams that had no chance. If they play the Spurs in the first round, the Spurs could win 2 games, in my opinion. They play the Thunder could win 2 games. They play the Clippers, I think the Clippers could win 1 or 2 games, right? So the Warriors will not have an easy track even as the number 1 seed, but Denver won't either, and neither will Houston, and neither will Portland, and all these other teams. So, yeah, I agree with you. Denver has it's going to be tough for them to win the 7-game series and really anybody, which is why it's hard to predict this Western Conference. I was going to look some up real quick, here's my thing. If you're in the Western Conference, okay, since the Warriors are the number 1 seed, and we are saying they're clearly the best team still, okay. If you're a Western Conference team, you want to play Portland in the first round because Portland doesn't have McCollum or Nurkic, and you want to be a 2, 3, 6, or 7 seed. So you avoid Golden State until the conference finals because, hey, you never know. Let's say Steph gets hurt. Let's say Durant gets hurt. Let's say there's suspensions. You get to the conference finals, you might be able to win and get to the finals. You play them in the first or second round, it's not happening. So if you're a team in the Western Conference, you maybe have to lose some games to get one of those. I'm just saying, you don't want to be the 8th seed for sure, and I don't even think you want to be 4th or 5th seed because the way the NBA bracket goes, the 4th, 5th seed has to play the number 1 seed. So that's, as a Clipper fan, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be 5 seed because then that means we're going to have to play the Warriors in the second round. So what's the point? Might as well be 6 seed, play Portland, right? You get 1 win, and then you play. So that's how you kind of have to, if you're a fan, that's how you have to think. I don't want to play the Warriors till the conference finals because then anything can happen, right? You have 2 rounds of basketball that have gone on, a month worth of basketball. You never know. There could be ankle injuries, suspensions, stuff like that. With all that. And so Kevin Durant is actually also 1 technical away from suspension, too. So I don't know if that applies to the playoffs or not.
It starts over in the playoffs.
Okay, it does.
So in the
more
regular
likely
season, you have 16.
I think this would matter a lot more if they had lost to the Nuggets last night. But I don't really think it matters. See, I wanted to ask you that because I didn't know. But so you think Rockets are second best team in the Western Conference?
They are the second best team because I think they have the best player in the NBA right now. Right, we can talk about Kevin Durant. We can talk about Giannis.
That's true.
Right now, the way that James Harden is playing, he is, in my opinion, hands down the MVP of the league and the best player.
Gave away his MVP.
So I'm sorry, I gave away my MVP.
We're going to move to that anyway.
But I had to. The way that this team is now. Here's the thing: we've seen it in the past. This team has not been able to dethrone the Warriors. Right, no matter what they throw at them, they haven't been able to do it. So, can James Harden? Chris Paul is playing right now. He seems to be healthy. And they seem to have a good nucleus around them, but I don't think you can ever really guarantee that Chris Paul will stay healthy. And if for some reason he has to miss a game or 2 or something like that, as great as James Harden is and all the accolades that he has and the praise that I just gave him, he cannot do it by himself. Not in a 7-game series. He can beat the Warriors for a game. He hit a game winner against them earlier in the year. But in a 7-game series, it's not going to happen. So this Houston Rockets team has to stay healthy. They wouldn't play the Warriors, and they would have to get to the 3rd round, I believe, in order to play the Warriors, right? It definitely wouldn't be in the 1st round, and I don't think it would be in the second round.
Well, it just depends, because they could end up being that 4th seed.
Well, that's true.
If they end up, I know they play the Clippers, which could be a lot. Like, they play the Clippers tonight, I believe. That could be a loss because the Clippers are hotter than it. So, I don't know the rest of their schedule, but I know that they don't have, like, a super easy one where they're, like, playing the Suns and all. Like, so,
right.
So, you never know. But, like, that's why I'm saying 2, 3, 6, or 7 seed. That's what you want to be if you're going into this playoffs, because the Warriors are the best team. So what is their schedule actually?
Houston's fine. So they're at the Clippers.
Okay.
And then they're home against New York, the Knicks.
Oh, so I must have looked at the wrong schedule.
Home against Phoenix.
Oh, wow. So I did look at the wrong one.
They finished the season at Oklahoma City. So they're going
at least 2-2.
At least 2-2.
So they'll well, but see, that's the other thing is, what I'm saying though is, if Portland just wins every game, then I know Portland has played Denver twice though. So yeah, mark it up. Houston's more likely. Houston's in good position because they're going to be the 2 seed, or they're going to be the 3 seed, and they're going to avoid the Warriors to the conference finals. That's what I'm talking about. If you're one of those teams, you do not want to fall out. So Portland's going to end up screwing themselves.
Yeah, Denver. So Denver has 5 games left. Little tougher schedule. They've got San Antonio.
That's a loss. That could be a loss.
Yeah, Portland in a back-to-back.
Yeah, it's tough.
Home and away. At Utah.
Oh, man. See, that's what I'm talking about.
And then against Minnesota.
So Houston's good. So
yeah.
if you're Houston Rockets, if you can beat the Clippers tonight, you're, like, in with that 3 or 2 seed, more than likely. So that's very interesting. Real quick, I have Harden as well as my MVP. The guy scored like almost 70 or 80 points in some games this season, and has led the team from out of the doldrums from earlier this season to be what we are now possibly saying the number 2 seed in the West, and the most legitimate opponent for the Warriors. So I got James Harden as well. Greek Freak's amazing. Westbrook is good as well, but
Westbrook, by the way,
Harden
yesterday putting up
MVP.
20, 20, and 20. He had 20 points, 20 rebounds, and 20 assists against the Lakers.
That's nasty.
Just nuts.
Yeah, so again, we got to give credit to Westbrook, but Harden's been unbelievable this season.
Unstoppable.
So real quick, we got about 2 minutes left in the podcast. Your too early to pick NBA Finals game and winner, yeah.
So I have, out of the West, I have the Warriors. And listen, it gets very old. It's like picking the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But until this team, separates and they lose 1 or 2 of their superstars, as long as their nucleus is together, and that starting 5 is together, along with their bench, who has only gotten better, by the way. All their bench players are back from years past, and they've only gotten more experience after playing in these games. So until this team dethrones itself, then I can't go against the Warriors in the West. In the East, it's a little more tricky. I would really like to see a Warriors 76ers matchup. I think that would just be fun. With you got Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler, and all those guys over there, and Ben Simmons, and just the Philly vibe. They play, even though they're an exciting brand of basketball. Joel Embiid doesn't back down from anyone, so that would be a great matchup with him and Draymond Green. I like the Bucks. I do, and I didn't think
you don't think they're just like a regular season team?
No, I don't think I would ever say that, man. But I really do like the Bucks. Now, problem is, I don't see the Bucks ever beating the Warriors in a 7-game series, so I don't think that would be as intriguing of a finals matchup. But I just the way that the Bucks have played this year, man, and the fact that Giannis has literally carried this team, not only with the way that he scores, but how he facilitates, and at his size, what he does. I really think in a 7-game series they can go up against any of these Eastern Conference teams. So I've got the Warriors and the Bucks. I wish I could say the Sixers, but I don't trust them as much. So Warriors and Bucks, and then obviously the Warriors.
I'm gonna go with the Warriors as well. Although I want to say Houston, but I just can't. Houston, I can't even guarantee they'll get out of like the second round potentially too. So it's although we think they're the best team. You run into a team that can score a lot on them and kind of demoralizes them. I think that can happen to that Houston team, so I think it's going to be the Warriors as well. And the Eastern Conference, I'm going to go the Raptors. I believe I predicted them at the very beginning of the season to make the finals, so I'll just stick with them.
We'll have to go back and check on that.
Kawhi Leonard is, in my opinion, a more clutch player than anybody on those other teams. And the Bucks, I think, will have a lot taken out of them by Boston, who I think is going to make second round. I don't think they'll lose to Boston, but I think they'll go like 7 with Boston in the second round. Toronto, I don't think that will happen, although they'd have to play 76ers. I think Toronto's going to get there, and I got Warriors in 6. I don't think the Eastern Conference has a chance. Too many one guy or two guy teams instead of a 4 or 5 guy team like the Warriors have.
Well, not that do you have to have 4 or 5.
No,
but,
you gotta
have at least 2.
Yeah,
at least
two, and then a culture of winning too. And I don't think any of the Eastern Conference teams have that so far. So I'm going to go with Warriors over the Raptors. All right, there you go. Hear the music right there. If you are listening on OC Rock Radio, let me just turn it down real quick because I know this always screws with people. If you're listening on the TuneIn app or you're listening on OC Rock Radio, you're hearing music right now. If not, if you're on Facebook Live, you're like, what the hell are they talking about? But Jared, good podcast today for not much information to talk about. And we'll move next week. We'll talk about what happened in the national championship game, what's happening with Russell Wilson, and if any of the big baseball stories happen, we'll discuss that too, and kind of make maybe more formal NBA predictions once we know kind of what's happening. Exactly. Right. So for Nick Nina,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast.